Welcome to Adapter's Advantage, breakthrough moments that lead to success. Our podcast brings you insider stories of the moments that mattered, turning points on the sometimes rocky road to success. Here's your host, Mark Magnacca, president and co-founder of Allego, the workforce training and readiness platform built for distributed teams.
Hi, I'm Mark Magnacca, and welcome back to the next episodes of the Adapter's Advantage podcast. I'm excited to be here with Mark Bowden. Now, Mark has recently spoken at one of our conferences called the Sales Success Summit, and it was such an amazing experience. I wanted to bring him to our listeners and viewers of this podcast. So before we jump right in, I want to give you a little background on Mark. He's been voted the #1 body language professional in the world for 2 years running. So now's the time to sit up straight. You'll see me do it, even if you're sitting at home. He's the founder of the communication training company TRUTHPLANE, whose clients include leading business people, politicians, presidents of Fortune 500 companies, and prime ministers of G7 powers. With years of experience training people across the globe on how to use digital media most effectively for better communication, Mark is now even a trainer for Zoom, yes, the company Zoom, equipping their new employees with best practices around virtual communication. His TEDx talk has reached millions of people, and he's regularly called upon by the media to comment on body language around elections and debates. He's the author of 4 books on body language and human behavior, including the recent bestseller, Truth and Lies, What People Are Really Thinking. So I'm excited to have him here on the podcast. Mark Bowden, welcome to the podcast.
Mark, thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thanks for the great introduction. It's lovely to be with you.
Well, Mark, when you meet people for the first time, given all that I've just said, and they ask you the question, so Mark, what do you do? How do you answer that question?
Here's what I say. I'm Mark Bowden. I'm an expert in human behavior and body language, and I help people all over the world to stand out, win trust, and gain credibility every time they communicate, including some of the leaders of the G7. So that's kind of my broadcast standard introduction. I'm not sure I'd turn up to a cocktail party and say that. Hey, you know what I might say nowadays? I might say, hey, I'm a YouTube creator, because apparently, for kids, that is like the #1 job to have, is like YouTube creator. And I've now, I've got this YouTube channel with my friends, the Behavior Panel. We've now got over 300,000 subscribers. We've grown that in a year. It's one of the fastest growing YouTube channels around. And so now I can say I have like the greatest, most popular job on the planet. It used to be spaceman, and I wanted to be a spaceman when I was a kid. Right. Now everybody wants to be a YouTube creator. So maybe I should say that more now.
So one of the things, just to kind of set the stage for everybody, I know that your undergraduate degree was in performing arts. Mm-hmm. So tell me, how is what you learned in the realm of performing arts applicable, and to what extent did it inform the direction that you went?
Yeah, so when I was doing performing arts, I was really, really focused on visual theatre, physical theatre. I was obsessed with the human body right from being a kid, because I was obsessed by natural history and animal life and Darwin and adaptation, and just, how we showed up on this planet in the first place. Right. And then also, like, now we're here, how can we work out what other people are doing? So, my vantage on performing arts was really, how does it use imagery in order to provoke a response out of other human beings? Like when you show up and you watch a film, for example, how is it that the whole audience are feeling the same feeling? Yes. When there isn't actually anybody on that film feeling a feeling anymore, even if they were in the first place. They left a record of a feeling that they had, or some information that they knew would trigger us all into feeling that feeling. It really was at that point still, for me, this world of mass communication, sure, which I just think is an extraordinary thing. I just think it's extraordinary. Look, human beings, we're one of the only few species on the planet that have language. And so because of that, we can cooperate together in an incredible way. It means we can build structures millions of times larger than our own body. Ants can do that. Bees can do that. They have language as well. Obviously not like our language. They don't talk to each other like in the cartoon ants or the cartoon animation bees. They have another way of using language. But we have language. We have body language as well, which isn't really a language. It's an animal communication system. But because of that, we can co-opt together, we can organize and build things over time greater than ourselves. So I think, to answer your question there, performing arts was a brilliant grounding in human behavior and visual media and how that can affect people on a grand scale throughout history, into the future, and into the millions. Hope that answers your question there, Mark.
Well, it does, Mark, and it actually brings up a couple of interesting related things. Now, like many Americans, I'm fascinated with the premise of the monarchy, and having not grown up in that culture. But I will tell you that my wife and I watched every episode of The Crown.
Yeah.
And so beyond the costumes and so much of what you just described, this ability to evoke an emotion from something that was recorded months or maybe even now years ago, it makes me think about, first of all, the body language of a monarch, and to what extent they learn to walk in a certain regal way. You almost never see a king running or the queen running, right? If you think about every aspect about the way they conduct themselves, you can snap a picture of them and you rarely catch them in some unbecoming pose. So my first question is, having grown up in England, well, what is your observation about this, particularly for the monarch, in the case of Queen Elizabeth, the training they get to telegraph the kind of body language messages that you're describing?
Well, I think Queen Elizabeth II, the current monarch, who's been a reigning monarch longer than any other monarch in British history, is an outlier to all of this. Because number one, she has been monarch over a period of mass communication that has never been seen before.
Yes, that's true.
Mass television. She's seen the internet. I mean,
color television for her.
Absolutely.
Right.
Communication revolution. She's been through, at least a couple of them. Whereas other monarchs, I mean, back in the day, they were probably sending carrier pigeons, or, somebody had to run up the length of the country to get a message to say, oh, here's what the monarch says. And they'd probably go, who? We're so departed from that. Yes. We don't know who that is. So as context changes, I think she has done a brilliant job of working out what a monarch is and what a current monarch should be. And I think, to be true, she has invented that. And so I think, to your point, I don't think there is any training. There could be now, but I think ultimately she invented the training because she was, plunged into this role because of the abdication of her uncle, and then her father's relatively early death. She was never going to be queen, and
it's
there
interesting
she is.
That you say that, because you're absolutely right. Because one of my favorite movies is The King's Speech. Yeah, and there couldn't be really a better example of the importance of your work than when you watch that speech and you see her father all dressed up. Yeah, he's got the walk right. He's got everything. Yeah. The package is complete. But when he goes to open his mouth with this really difficult stutter, it undermines so much of the communication, right? Right. And so she also witnessed that, right? And she witnessed kind of this metamorphosis where he was never great at it, but he got to the point where he could actually do it and still command that audience, even though he wasn't a gifted speaker.
Well, I mean, that's interesting, isn't it? Because what we're dealing with a stutter is essentially a rhythm. That's all it is. It's a rhythm. Yeah. And human beings will not trust that particular rhythm. So Is it that we don't trust the monarch? Well, they have nothing to do, that their way of leading us or representing us, which more importantly, has nothing to do surely about the rhythm of their speech. But for us as a people, how else do we judge a monarch? Like, how else are we going to decide, is this going to be good or bad? Look, Mark, when it comes to sales, you got somebody who shows up on video, okay? You don't know very much about their product and service. You've probably done a little bit of exploration, but now, you want to know a little bit more, and you want to meet a representative of the product or service. Mm-hmm. And they show up, and there is, like, how do we judge the product and service? We don't know anything about it. We're meeting the representative. Well, we take our feelings about the representative and we project those onto the product and service. So you could have the greatest product and service, okay? But if your representative shows up and represents it for the audience in a way that causes concern, well, that's your product or service dead in the water. Yeah. They'll go to a worse product and service, but with a better representative of
very
that.
Interesting point. Let me pivot to the sales world, where I know you have applied so much of what you've learned. We've talked about some examples of how it's used effectively. What are some of the biggest mistakes that salespeople or sales leaders make in this virtual realm when they're communicating?
Yeah, well, look, as you imagine, just like over the last year, and I mean, I know you've been thinking about it longer than I have, but certainly for me, over the last year and a half, just like our audience, I have been plunged into this virtual world. I'm pleased that it's been a bonus that I've been plunged into it, because it's caused me to do some thinking about this, and every day get in front of the camera with the people who are most important in my business and work out, like, how do you do this really well? And what are the results? If you like, is this economical? Is this a good machine? Like, and here's what I've learned. This does some things better than live. Okay, it does some things like so much, and let's just not discount them, but let's put aside the economic factors. Like, you and I, anybody can work out the economics of this. Like, a camera costs X, an internet connection costs X, and a plane or even a car ride costs Y. You can do the math.
Right. So just to put a point on that, Mark, before we go on, I want to make sure for everybody, separate from the money that Mark's talking about, right? There's also the most precious commodity for any of us during our entire lives, and that is time. Right. So the real question then becomes, separate from just the return on investment, so to speak, of the cost of doing this thing versus getting on an airplane, the question is the value of your time to be able to go, for example, to have a first meeting in a different city with a prospect who may not be interested in what you're talking to, about at all. So the question is, has the threshold of what is, quote, essential travel been raised? And I think whether people agree with what you're about to say or not, it's undeniable that in almost every company we interact with, the threshold for when you are going to travel for business has been increased. Now, it's not that you can't do it, it's just that there's got to be a reason.
Right. There's got to be a reason. And can you only do that reason through traveling? Well, look, let's kind of answer it in this way. Here's what I know to be true about this. This does personal connection actually really well in a super economic way. I mean, Mark, this is, I don't know, like the second, maybe even the third time, maybe even the second time that we've met. All right, maybe
it's only the second time, and other than your keynote, the keynote, okay. But I wasn't. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Look, first.
Oh, I feel like I was going to say, like, I know the couch now. I know the books. Right. I know the pictures of your family, right?
Yeah, you're in my home again.
Right.
You keep coming round to my house. Okay.
Yes.
And that's good for me, and it's good for you, and it's good for our relationship.
That green blanket, Mark. I
would wrap you in it. If you're cold, I would wrap you in it. I would, look, I would say this, is that what people get wrong is they believe that personal isn't professional. And I want you, if you think that, I want you to turn that on its head. And if you even look, here's what I want you to think. Here's what I want you to know. Okay. Personal is the new ideal of professional. Okay. The more personal you can get with that person on the other side of the camera, the more professional they will believe you to be, and the more professional you will be being. Because look, in terms of product, and I don't care what product it is, it could be a little widget or something, that costs a few cents that you buy en masse, or it could be a super expensive, you're buying an oil tanker or something like that. I don't know, sure. Something super expensive. Okay. The details of that are available on the internet. Anybody in sales knows that. There isn't, it's not about data anymore. There's plenty of data. It's about trust and credibility. And you can win trust and credibility really fast via camera. You can save even more time because you get in people's personal spaces. And as long as you play into that rather than you push against it, okay, you will have a less friction in the business relationship, because the last thing you want in anything is friction. Like in any sales process, friction kills it, doesn't it? It's like they're not calling you back. It's like you don't know where it's going. Well, they've got to ask somebody who needs to ask somebody. It's like it's all ground to a halt right now. The more you can free up and make it less friction, even if it's just like, well, my video platform, it's just a press of a button rather than I've got to go through a whole bunch of hoops in order to and do some crazy dance to even, get online. It's like, I can't even be bothered. It's such an effort. The moment you take down that friction, you win an advantage, and friction is taken away if you can set up your environment right and you can perform right and you know how this works really well, friction will go down. Now let's just put that against if we were to meet usually in the usual world. I don't know, I would have probably flown, somewhere near you, and I'd go, hey, Mark, I'm kind of in the area. So, do you want to meet up? And you'd go, yeah, sure. Okay. And then maybe we'd have met at a Starbucks somewhere, because it's easy and it's, but we've just met somewhere totally corporate and faceless, which is designed really for nothing important to ever occur there.
Yeah,
I mean, how many Starbucks meetings do you go, yeah, I'll have to think about that. And I think we'll need another meeting and we'll...
Right. You're not deciding at Starbucks in most cases.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas we had our first meeting, you're in my home, okay? I can see you really close up.
Right.
Okay, so I'm getting lots of information from you, and instantly we're working together, we're coming up with ideas, we decide to do this. Like, I would suggest there was zero friction.
Right.
You weren't there going, yeah, I don't know, Mark, I'm not sure. I think I'll have to talk to some people about it.
Yeah. No, it's so the takeaway that I'm getting, Mark, because there's several critical things I want our listeners to hear. One is that we call it's a myth. Right. And the myth that so many salespeople believe is if I can't do it in person, it can't be as good. And you're basically turning that myth on its head, saying, actually, it can be better.
Yeah.
It can be better for a couple of different reasons, right? One of which is you can do more of them. And the second is it can actually be more personal because especially for B2B sellers, it was very rare that you were ever in the home of your customer, nor were they in yours, right? Yeah. So I'm taking that first piece on personal connection. Now, the thing that you did that shocked me in its effectiveness was that, like many people, I have taken media training and I've done acting, and I was always taught in the era before all of this happened, that whether you were a newscaster, and I thought about this, you've been on camera more than most newscasters who did 1 hour of news every night for 20 years.
Yeah.
You've been on 6 hours a day, right? So you've already been on camera more than most actors have been, because actors, they're only in front of the camera for a short period of time, right?
Yeah.
But you've done something with your hands. So most of us were taught you sit with your hands, you never put your hands in front of the camera, but you have a whole different philosophy about this. Can you tell our viewers about your belief and the science that supports it around the importance of using motion in this medium called video?
Well, look, when I first started working in film and studying film, so I can't remember who told me this, but they went, Mark, it's a moving visual medium. The shot, something must move.
Right. Otherwise, what's the point?
Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
It's like, hang on, because back in that day, we'd be, burning, 32 millimeter film, super expensive. Like, you cannot believe how expensive it is. So it's like, come on. We're burning film, like, do something, have something happen. Okay. Same thing is, these are actors, not philosophers. So they must act. They must do something, not just think something. If you're going to be on camera and just think, it's like, I'll get a philosopher to do that. They'll probably do it for free. They'll be happy for the exposure.
Exactly.
So here's what I know is it is a visual, active, action-based medium. Now you rightly say, hang on though, I'd seen so many news anchors, that were still, because they're the anchor. Because they're the anchor. They sit in the studio and they anchor the news to fact and truth. It is their job to go, I am so confident that this is factual that I can sit here with millions of dollars of equipment around me and people will point it at me because I am the fact and the truth. And then they go, and now here's the weather. And somebody would go, look, we have no factual basis on this whatsoever because it seems to change moment to moment. But here's my best prediction.
You're right. The weather guy's the only one who brought it to life. Look at what's happening over here.
Because it's meteorology and it's inherently boring and rarely turns out to be accurate. Especially back in the old days, it was rarely accurate.
Yes.
So they got to animate the frame. When you went to the outside broadcast, you'd suddenly got somebody with a microphone and they're up and they're excited, because they're there. And the anchor anchors it back. So what classically happens when people approach video is they only look at one part of history, one portion of it, and they go, well, that's how you do it. And I guarantee that is only how they did it then. And there's 1,000,001 ways of doing it. There are principles. So look, here's the principle, is that your brain likes more information rather than less information. And when insufficient data, it defaults to negatives, okay? So if I am the anchor, I'm now giving you insufficient data around what's happening in my hands and the rest of my body. And because, look, I win very little status because I don't have the icon of a national television show down in my, corner here. Right. So how do you know how to trust me? On what basis do you go, we trust Mark more than anybody else? I start to show you more data. I show you open palm gestures. Okay. And now, by the way, the shot is moving. Okay. Yeah, now I'm using the visual medium. So now I'm attracting your attention because I'm in competition with YouTube right now. Okay. I'm literally in competition with that. So I'm moving in the frame. I'm animating the frame. Great word, animation, from the Latin anima, literally to be alive. To be alive. I am live with you right now. I'm showing you open palm gestures, which is a universal signal for no tools, no weapons, nothing in my hands.
Which is why we shake hands, right? We
shake hands to go, look, feel it. Nothing in my hands. I'm not aggressive. No sword, no knife, no tool, nothing. I'm also showing you what we call baton gestures. These are the gestures that conduct along to the rhythm of my speech. That helps you understand that my rhythm of movement is the same as my rhythm of speech. The more aligned they are, the more you think I'm telling you the truth, that I am reliable, because my body is connected with my words. And the more they feel connected, you'll go, the more reliable they are, because your instinct knows when I'm making up a story, when I'm not telling you the truth, when I'm lying, I have to stop myself lying. I have to stop myself telling the truth. I have to make up a new story. I have to.
Goes back to our stuttering thing before, right?
The stuttering thing will, and the movement will not fit the words.
Okay, so this is brilliant, Mark. This is brilliant. So you just made me have an epiphany just at this moment that I hadn't had before. First of all, I realized that as much as my natural way of talking is very much the way you just described,
right?
In my role as a podcast host, I'm acting as the anchor.
Yes.
And so I'm purposely not showing you my hands because I'm here to ground the visual image so that the attention is on you.
Right.
That's number one. So this is really a great lesson in that it's not that both of us have to be doing it, but the takeaway is that as you just described it, the person who was the anchor was reading the news. They were not the star of the show per se, right? And so realizing that the credibility that came from, in effect, being very bland and boring, and the idea was, I'm here just to give you the facts. So I'm thinking about Walter Cronkite in the United States, right? He was the most trusted man in America. And maybe the most iconic broadcast he ever did was when he announced that JFK had been killed. And if you remember, he took off his glasses and he just wiped this tear away from his eye. And no one had ever seen him ever express emotion. And it was so powerful. And the whole country realized, like, oh my God, this is bad, right? That's the first thing I just learned from what you said. The second thing that is just resonating in me is this notion of speech. So if I can go back to a President Kennedy example, I noticed two things. President Kennedy didn't do this. He didn't say, ask not what. He did this, right? He had, and in this case, I guess it was a closed palm, but he said, ask not what your country can do for you. And so he had the rhythm of the gesture. And of course, other politicians like Bill Clinton, they all picked up on this unconscious pattern that was oozing with credibility. You've just diagnosed it for us.
Right. So look, you've got to make this a visual moving medium. Just as you say, Mark, not everybody has to move. That will be what we call split focus. Like nobody will know what to look at. If you move at the rate that I do at the same time as I'm moving, nobody will know what.
You can't watch both of us.
Yeah. So actually what you're doing quite well, I would suggest, is what you're doing is you're emulating the behaviors that you'd like to see in the audience. So you're focused on me, you're still, you're listening. Basically what you're doing is going, hey audience, here's the way to pay attention to Mark.
Yes.
Here's what you want to do around Mark. Be still, watch carefully, listen carefully. So again, that is good use of nonverbal communication. Any salesperson, anybody in sales who shows up, or leadership who shows up on video, can take a page from that, in that when the client is talking, focus on them, look down the barrel of the lens at them and let them see that you are fixated on what they're saying. Make them the focus of it. So I'm animated. You heard me there go, make them the focus of it. When this hand moves.
Did you practice this, Mark? I know it's natural now, but did you practice consciously synchronizing your gestures to what you are saying?
So our gestures are designed to synchronize when we're being honest, when we're being, when we think we're doing the right thing.
Yes, I got it.
Because the brain goes, well, you're doing the right thing. We know how to do the right thing. We've got this set in our mind. When you are focused, your body will fit in with your mind and vice versa. All I'm doing is focusing. That's all. I'm going, there is nothing else that matters right now other than me getting this message across to Mark and through Mark to the audience. Because essentially, Mark, what you're being right now is the avatar of the audience.
Exactly.
You are being the representative of the audience, okay?
Yes.
And because they like you, they're more likely to like me. And the more you look like you like me, the more they'll go, well, I like Mark, and Mark seems to like Mark, so let's engage with the content here.
Why is it so important for people to understand in this medium to look in the camera versus look somewhere else on the screen?
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so let's look at eye contact. We as social mammals, there are other social mammals on the planet. The majority of them have eyes on the side of their head, not on the front. We are hunter-gatherers, and so we have eyes on the front of our head because we are going to judge distance really well, and we're going to signal to each other silently as to where the value is, that there's prey over there or there's fruit over there, and don't make too much noise because we might disturb a predator. Yeah. So we indicate things of value by focusing our eyes on them. If I look at you down this camera, your brain goes, oh, I'm the ripe fruit. I'm the thing of value. I'm the important thing. If I focus my eye contact on something else, same voice, same focus on the content for you, I can say, Mark, you and your audience are so important to me today. You know, I'm so happy to have shown up in order to focus on you and the audience.
Doesn't feel the same at all.
We're not important.
Yeah.
We're not important.
Yeah.
You know, because we've got millennia of history that says the eyes will focus on the most valuable thing. Now, on top of, and by the way, you have a neurochemical that tells your brain that that's happening, okay? And it's called dopamine. When we get strong eye contact within close proximity and there's no danger around us, we're pretty safe, levels of dopamine spike. And dopamine is the neurotransmitter that tells your brain things are going to get good. This is an optimistic environment. Hang out here because there's going to be a payoff to this. So if I want to engage you in this environment, okay, and I have zero status, I haven't got an icon down here of a TV channel, sure, and you know, I'm in my own home, and you know, who on earth am I? I just lock eye contact with you, and I go, it doesn't matter who I am, it's how important you are. That's a really important thing. Now, the other thing on top of this, Mark, is I'm not getting height dominance on you. Let me just raise myself to height dominance, okay? Now I've got slight height dominance on you, okay? You're not height dominant on me. Let me take my eye line down so that you have height dominance on me. Yeah. We are on the eye level. You're as tall as I am. I have as much stature as you have.
That's another important piece I had never considered until you just said it. And this little device that we just showed, by allowing you to raise the camera up so that you can be looking at somebody, you know, you're looking at the camera, but it's on the level versus with any kind of, that's really significant.
Yeah, Mark. that little device. And let me show you my setup. Well, first of all, look, let me show you what most people's video calls look like, okay?
Yeah. It's amazing, the contrast. It's awful. You know, the lighting is not right.
This is because I'm using my laptop as a laptop.
And by the way, for the human face, there's very few of us. Brad Pitt and Angelina, right? The view up the nose is not a good look for any of us.
Yeah, how many great films do the up the nose shot? How many great film directors are like, okay, let's set up the prime lens because let's do the up the nose shot.
Right.
So it doesn't exist. Doesn't exist in film. What paintings, what great masterpieces have they gone, well, look, let's look up the nose of the subject. It never happens. So look, you know, the first thing you're going to want to do,
just what you're doing, the actual comparison of right now I'm on Zoom, right, with my camera on the level with light, and now you have just this natural light off your web camera from your laptop camera. And then if you pivot back, because now that I've seen the other one like this, it's actually harder to look at.
Let me show you this one. There we go.
Yeah, it's literally as if you just went through makeup and like seriously, it's a meaningful difference in tone and everything.
Yeah. But you might look, here's what I want to tell you. The camera that I just went to, that is like $2,000 of camera, okay? Mm-hmm. So you might go, oh, well, gee, Mark's got a great lens and Mark's got a great camera. Let me just show you something, okay? I'm going to go back to my laptop camera here, and you can go, okay, that's not very good. Let me just fix this for you for zero money. I'm going to get my waste paper basket. I'm going to pour out the waste paper. I'm going to get my laptop. I'm going to stick it on top of there like that. I'm going to adjust that like that.
80% better.
Right. So I got 80% better and I spent
zero
money.
Yeah.
Zero money. It isn't about equipment on the whole. It's about setup. It's always about structure. It's never about content. It's really about structure, I would say. How much better is that?
Mark, it's fantastic. Look, we have time for one more question.
Yeah,
and you may have just answered it. My question is, based on your experience, what's the most important skill that you think people should learn or improve today in this virtual/hybrid world?
Yeah. So look, I'm going to be biased, obviously, because I'm a communication coach and trainer, and I'm going to be quite general, and I'm going to say, but this will be useful for you, even though it's general. Now's the time to double down on your communication skill. Okay. And I'm especially, look, if you don't take this advice and you have kids right now, give this advice to them because they will thank you for it and you'll thank you for it. Okay. Just recently, what's happened over the last year and a half is people haven't seen other people face to face.
Sure.
Okay. And there is a communication deficit, and there are certain jobs out there that are high net worth jobs, and they rely on very good communication skills. Okay. There is now a deficit. There is a year and a half of people not getting the practice in, okay, that they're not going to be able to make up for that. If you double down right now, either you or your kids or anybody you love and care about doubles down on upping their skill on communication now, they will leave the stratosphere compared to most people right now. Okay. Now it's a sad thing to say because we're going, hey, they've got a deficit over there. What are we going to do about that? Sure. If you want to help them, if you want to buy training for them, if you want to do all of that stuff, great, help provide. Mm-hmm. But first of all, look to yourself. Okay. Because you're going to have to raise the funds for that anyway. And that will take some communication. Okay. Look to yourself and think, what can I do on a daily basis to raise my communication skill? Because I will widen the gap so wide right now. And that's what I'm experiencing. Maybe you're experiencing the same, is the people who are trying to work out how to do this really well. The gap is just crazy.
It is. It's so interesting. I mean, if I can paraphrase what Mark's saying, if you do nothing else, get the garbage can and get the camera up to a level. Right. And Mark, I'll leave you with this thought. My co-founder, Yu-Chun Lee, we just had a meeting. He was back in the office.
Yeah.
And he called me afterwards, say, I just realized something. I have a better setup for virtual communication at home than I do at the office. And so for many of us, you're going to need to have it in both places, because it's very hard once you're used to using good equipment and just simple things, lights and having the computer at the right level and such. It's very hard to go back to that camera up the nose thing. Like, you just don't want to do it. So Mark, this has been terrific. I really appreciate this time. If our viewers and listeners want to learn more about you and about your programs, what's the best way to do this?
Yeah, find me at truthplane.com, TRUTHPLANE, truthplane.com. Link in with me. I answer questions all day, every day on LinkedIn. You got more questions for me, just link in with me. That's a great way. I'll just stick Mark Bowden in Google and you will find me. You're very welcome to reach out. You're welcome around my home any day of the week. I'll be sitting here.
Mark, I'm going to leave you with the words of, even though you're British, you're living in Toronto with another Canadian who was a communication expert named Marshall McLuhan. And he said, the medium is the message. And you have continued to demonstrate the power of that phrase all these years later. So thanks so much for being on the podcast.
My pleasure. Good to see you, Mark. I'm going to come back whenever you want me.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for joining us this week on Adapter's Advantage. Available on all major podcast platforms. Make sure you visit our website, allego.com, where you can subscribe to our podcast so you'll never miss an episode. If you liked this show, you might want to check out our virtual training kit to learn how to keep a remote team running at full speed. Go to allego.com/virtual to download your kit today. Be sure to tune in for our next episode. And don't forget, one new idea can change your life.